Later with Mo Kelly on KFI AM 640.
For my final thought before we get out of here, the morning started in an uncomfortable way, of course, with the reported passing of Roberta Flack. And the easy way to describe her musical contributions is that she wrote some of the most memorable and impactful love songs of all time. No hyperbole. My all-time favorite of Flack was Feel Like Making Love. I would play all the music, but it's not going to last in the podcast. We can't put it in, so charge that to us. But you know her music. My favorite was Feel Like Making Love. But the world also knows her name for songs like Tonight I Celebrate My Love, her duets with Donny Hathaway, The Closer I Get to You, Where is the Love? Where is the love? Where is the love? That's Where's the Love. Closer I Get to You. The closer I get to you. The First Time I Ever Saw Your Face, another one of her hits. And of course, Killing Me Softly. In fact, the last two, The First Time I Ever Saw Your Face and Killing Me Softly, I bet you don't know this, they won back-to-back Record of the Year Grammys. Unprecedented at the time. And I can't personally remember a time in which her music wasn't played in my house. And there's a kind of a personal connection here. My parents were in the Howard University choir with Roberta Flack while they were in college. So they had a rapport. So her music was always on in the house. And I was listening to her music, I guess, long before other people, because her music was much older than me. Listening to songs like The Closer I Get to You, Where is the Love, Tonight I Celebrate My Love, had nothing for me as a child, but I had a greater appreciation of her music and Donny Hathaway's by extension by the time I got older. And here's the best part of Roberta Flack. Unfortunately, even though she had to pass, but this is the best part of moments just like these. Because Roberta Flack, of course, was, and it's being rediscovered right now, but also rediscovered many years ago. Remember when the Fugees did their cover of Killing Me Softly? And the funny thing is, you talk to someone under 30, they have no reference point with Roberta Flack in that song and Killing Me Softly. They think the Fugees were the ones who originally did it, and no, they didn't. They think of Lauryn Hill singing it. It's like, no, it's a nice rendition, a nice cover, but it's Roberta Flack's song. But nobody has duplicated her impact on music or created the melodies which would endure for generations. You can sample it, you can do a cover it, but you can't really create that magic. And that for me is the truest test of the strength of someone's legacy. Will they know your name and your positive contributions after you're gone, beyond just the memory of your living relatives? I'm confident that Roberta Flack's music still will be played 100 years from now, long after you, me, Tawala, Mark, Stefan, everyone listening right now are also gone. Don't want to be morbid, but 100 years from now, they still will be listening to Roberta Flack, and people will still continue to enjoy the majesty of her music. Her music will continue to help people fall in love, find the love, celebrate their love, and rededicate their love. And you know what? That's not a bad legacy to leave. We should all be so lucky. Rest in power, Roberta Flack. Your 88 years will be easily outlasted by all the time in the future the world will celebrate your music. For KFI AM 640, I'm Mo Kelly. I do have a final thought for tonight, and it kind of ties into something we were talking about a little bit earlier. If you're old enough to remember the Reagan administration, one of the most quoted phrases of the administration, and the president for that matter, Ronald Reagan, he'd say, trust but verify. And that was in regard to nuclear disarmament talks. What some people seem to forget, or maybe don't even know, is that phrase originally was a Russian proverb. Yes, a Russian proverb. In fact, the phrase became internationally known in English after Suzanne Massey, a scholar of Russian history, taught it to then President Ronald Reagan. And there's a lot of wisdom in that phrase, regardless of its origins. I know the irony is thick given the politics of today, but there's a lot of wisdom in it. In a world with towing scams and short-term rental scams, Nigerian prince email scams, and just garden variety fraud, it's understandable to not believe in a lot of things. Believe me, I get it. We put our trust into a lot of stuff that we just can't control. Every intersection we drive through, we trust the stoplights are performing as designed and not in opposition of one another. We trust when we get on airplanes that they have had their necessary maintenance, the pilots are sober with adequate sleep, and the air traffic controllers are competent and, hopefully not overworked on that day or understaffed. And most of those things we cannot verify. But there are some things we actually can verify. We can verify if there's actual fraud and waste in our federal government. Forensic audits happen every damn day in this country, in every industry. It's not new. It ain't special. You don't need computer programmers to find fraud. You just need maybe some good accountants, trained accountants. That's sufficient because every forensic audit actually produces a report at the end. That's the verification component. And then subsequent to that, you make cuts, you make changes, you fire people, all that kind of stuff. You don't make the cuts and not produce a report and not produce the proof of the fraud. We shouldn't trust with no verification, right? Right? We don't have to take someone's word for it, right? Regardless of whomever is president, especially not an unelected private citizen and unconfirmed by the Senate. And that same person has no oversight. If Joe Biden brought in George Soros to do what Elon Musk is doing, you would likely raise holy hell. And rightfully so. Rightfully so. I happen to believe that if you're going to fire thousands of people, no exaggeration, thousands of people, there should be an actual preceding report and proof of fraud prior to giving out pink slips. Before you gut entire agencies and departments, we as the American people, or at the minimum, the elected Congress or confirmed cabinet should be able to verify any claim of fraud. I shouldn't just have to take your word for it. I shouldn't. Otherwise, you end up firing nuclear workers you shouldn't have. Oops, so sorry. Please come back to work. Or you send out ill-advised emails asking people to tell you what they did this past week and justify their jobs, which actually is an admission you had absolutely zero idea what the employees and agencies did in the first place. Or, like today, you have 21 of your own employees quit because there's a lack of cohesion and competence in this endeavor. Here's the bottom line. There is no legitimate reason to trust what DOGE is doing, not as long as we're intentionally being shielded from verifying any of it. For KFI AM 640, I'm Mo Kelly. Here is my final thought for the evening. Time and time again, we are told that the government should be run more like a business. And I personally bristle every time I hear that. Businesses are profit driven. The government, that is about or should be about providing services that private industry is either ill-equipped or ill-suited to provide. That is why there are such things as police and fire departments, which are not predicated on turning a profit. That is why there are things like public education, where we aren't forced to pay for all levels of our schooling. That's why taxes are collected to pay for street maintenance, sidewalk repair, or other public works, for example. If you were to have government work like a business, then you would have anarchy. I mean, as much as we complain about the cost of eggs and gas right now, and I hear from you, you all are some complaining mother fathers. Imagine having to worry about the escalating price of government services yearly because the government would then put profits first. like a business. Imagine the struggles of small businesses without federal tax incentives. Tax incentives aren't a moneymaker for the government. Imagine the free market without the benefit of grants or subsidies. How do you grow a small business without them? But you know, those things don't generate profit either for the federal government, but they have great value to our economy. Imagine police and fire departments being run like businesses and not services provided by state and local governments. Imagine FEMA providing loans with interest to assist disaster victims instead of actual aid. Imagine having to pay back aid. Because businesses aren't in the business of giving away free money to help people with no chance of a return on that investment. Businesses charge to maximize profits because that's what businesses do. Or the government could place sales tax on every federal good or service now because you would have to purchase it. Why? Because you want government run like a business. That's what happens when you spend money on businesses. You pay sales tax. If you want the federal government to be more like a business, well, that's what it would include. Imagine the federal government being subject to the whims of market forces and competition. No way in hell you want that. Remember, you want government to be more like business. I'm here to remind you, businesses fail. These are some of the arguments why you don't want to privatize Social Security, for example. And I know what some of you are thinking. I'm not like, a mind reader or a soothsayer, but I hear the arguments, the same arguments that actual businesses are better at what they do than what government does. And yes, they just do different things. But don't forget, actual businesses can go bankrupt and start over possibly if they make a mistake, not the actual government. A business going bankrupt, let me remind you, receives what? Federal protection under the bankruptcy code. The federal government can't file Chapter 11 and also get federal protection. See the problem with that? The government can't file Chapter 7 bankruptcy and liquidate its assets to pay off its creditors like a business. Oh, yes, let's sell the Lincoln Memorial and the Washington Monument to help pay off the national debt. See, it doesn't work like that. Businesses both incur risk and have safety nets. Safety nets provided by whom? Say it with me, the federal government. America learned through the Great Depression that the government and business had to have some degree of daylight separation, or the collapse of markets could collapse the whole country. The federal government is at best a big old nonprofit. We pay into it through taxes, but we don't pay for it in terms of per use of services, purchasing goods, or subscriptions. I have a Disney Plus subscription. So does Tawala, but we don't have a fire department or 911 subscription. I don't have the premium plan where if I pay more, I can also get the ambulance service and sidewalk repair bundle. Government was never designed to work like that or be managed with a similar ethos. Imagine the federal government raising its prices each year like landlords raise rent. Because that's what businesses do. Profit motive, profit driven. Or raise the interest rates because it can as the federal government, and also then charge high interest rates for all the services it provides because that's what credit cards and banks do. They try to make money. Yes, run the federal government like Wells Fargo. Say that stuff out loud. It's just a horrible idea, running government like a business. You don't want that. You want the government to better manage spending. That's something I think we all can agree upon. The problem is that too many people, maybe you're one of them, you've confused extreme wealth of individuals as somehow indicative of a well-run company. It's not. Ask the Amazon employees, the Washington Post employees about Jeff Bezos. Ask the Tesla employees about Elon Musk and what they have to fight for daily. You as a citizen would be akin to the Amazon delivery driver working a 12-hour shift and urinating in a water bottle while on the job. You're not Jeff Bezos, and don't you forget it. That's what running America as a business looks like. There is no trickle down, and its employees always get the short end of the stick. For KFI AM 640, I'm Mo Kelly. And to close out the show tonight, for my final thought, I know you've seen the news about the Jeffrey Epstein files, which are released on some level. I don't know how many documents have been released, but I think of it a number of ways. And on one hand, I'm thinking maybe at long last, we'll find out who, actually killed JFK as far as the other files which are going to be released. Who is on this Jeffrey Epstein client list and who really murdered Ron and Nicole? Well, maybe not the last one. We don't need any help with that. But the Trump administration has taken the first steps in releasing the evidence surrounding Jeffrey Epstein and released it as an exclusive to MAGA Media. I'm serious, MAGA Media, which of course is the personal media company of President Trump. Now, notwithstanding the obvious conflict of interest of showing favoritism to the president's personal media company in releasing such information, it raises the obvious question as to the veracity of the content. And I'm only talking to reasonable people. So if you're unreasonable, this is not for you. But when you have a president who is inextricably linked to the information in question, and we know he's linked because the president is listed at least twice on the flight logs. That's not even subject to debate. But when you have a president who is connected to the material and directing the media agency which gets the material and directs the redactions, what should we make of what we're finally allowed to read? We do know that we won't be reading any opposing opinion in the Washington Post for starters, which goes back to what I said last segment about controlling information. But let me put this another way. And this is not a question for you to answer out loud, but answer it for yourself. How would you feel about Bill Clinton, who is obviously connected to this information, but how would you feel about Bill Clinton releasing this same report and giving the exclusive to a Clinton-owned media outlet? And in this hypothetical, Bill gave it to the Clinton-owned media outlet only after his appointees made all of the redactions. And the redactions were made and only made by his personal appointees after firing virtually everyone in the DOJ because they weren't in strict alignment with the Clinton administration goals. Remember, President Trump fired all non-loyalists in the DOJ. You'd be more than justified at being somewhat skeptical, just somewhat skeptical. And what I'm saying is, when something is done in an overtly political way, with overtly political overtures, as far as where I'm sitting, it's fair to then question what we're looking at. If you think President Trump was going to allow the release of any embarrassing information, any damaging information to him personally or professionally or politically to him or those close to him, you respectfully don't know how any of this works. To this day, he has withheld public revelation of his medical records, the fullness of his taxes, his college transcripts, and even fought against the Jack Smith congressional report being made public. That's not my opinion. All that is factual and all that is verifiable. But the Epstein files that his own administration redacted and his own administration released to his own media company as an exclusive to, I would assume, to monetize, I can't say it's wholly on the up and up. And I definitely don't have any dog in this fight. I can promise you I'm not in the Epstein files. I can't speak for Tuwala. I can't speak for Mark. Damn sure can't speak for Stefan. They're all probably very nice guys. But I don't know if they're going to be found in the Epstein files. But I can say confidently that I'm not in the Epstein files. I have no dog in this fight. But I do know that a reasonable person, and again, I'm only talking to the reasonable folks out there, a reasonable person should be able to look at this and say, are we seeing what we think we are seeing? And this is not being conspiratorial. It's about control of information. This is about political motivations. This is about whether we are getting the full story and we're being told the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. I personally don't believe we will ever get all of the truth regarding the Jeffrey Epstein files. In fact, if we were, we probably would have gotten it by now. We'll probably never know what happened to Jeffrey Epstein, the person in that cell. It's one of those things which will go down in history as another one of those Kennedy-like mysteries. We'll never quite know everything. But this is what I do know. Whatever we will read tomorrow, which will be released by AG Pam Biondi, has been thoroughly curated to insulate and protect people as so determined by the people who are releasing the information. For KFI AM 640, I'm Mo Kelly.